Well, hello and welcome in to Off the Bench here on a Tuesday. Reed Mouse in the host chair once again. We have a fun day planned for you guys today. Today is the trade deadline in the NFL, and the Bengals already active, their second trade of the season. Reminder, I believe coming into this year, the Bengals have made 2 in-season trades in the history of the franchise coming into this year, and now they made their second trade. And it's a trade of Logan Wilson, who requested a trade a couple weeks ago, and he's a Dallas Cowboy. Got a 7th-round pick in return for him. We'll talk about that extensively today and other moves that the Cincinnati Bengals can make. Yesterday was the tip-off of college basketball, and both major college basketball teams in the area. Xavier beat Marist in a probably too tightly contested game for Xavier fans. And the Bear Kittens of the University of Cincinnati handled the Catamounts of Western Carolina University. And that's pretty much all we're going to talk about in that regard. Is that we'll leave it right there. Stone Shields, welcome in here. Is that a Vineyard Vines? Is that a Vineyard Vines quarter zip that you're rocking today? I'm always impressed by your style.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had it for several years. Look, it's getting cold. I'm not a cold weather guy, and it keeps me comfortable, so I figured I'd throw it on for the show today.
It is funny because you often comment on or off air. You take little jabs and little pokes at me because I went to private school for 16 years.
I knew this was
and
coming.
Here you are rocking a Vineyard Vines shirt, and there's nothing that says I'm a private school kid quite like Vineyard Vines. Probably wearing aloe shoes
No.
I just don't know where you get the gall to poke at me for my private school education when you're rocking Vineyard Vines here on a Tuesday.
I was standing in front of my closet this morning getting ready to come into the studio, and I was looking at it, and I was going, and I was a little bit chilly this morning, and I was looking at it, and I was like, wow, that looks warm. And I was like, well, I know if I put this on, Reed's going to have something to say about it. But I went with it anyway. I've got one other one that I have, so maybe we'll see that either later this week or next week. But I've got 2, and this is one of them. And, my prediction came true here, as that's the first thing you mentioned here.
Well,
you mentioned it. You mentioned the Logan Wilson trade, but you didn't even go into detail on that. You had to talk about the
I said what we got. It was a 7th-round pick, and that's what we got in return for Logan Wilson. And we'll get to it. We're probably going to spend a whole hour on Logan Wilson and the Cincinnati Bengals here, but in the brevity of this conversation, I just wanted to mention the Vineyard Vines shirt, as I'm desperately, maybe by the end of the show, I'll pull up a picture. I'll show a picture from my formative years when I was 19 years old, a Vineyard Vines shirt that I have, which every time I see a picture of it, it is hilariously embarrassing. The T-shirt. I mean, it's 4 different panels of colors. It's an absolutely hilarious shirt. But that was from back in 2015, so over 10 years ago. I digress. Let's get in talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. We're gonna have Craig Sandlin on in just a few minutes to talk about this trade. We also Chatterbox Bengals plans to go live tonight or this afternoon. Trade deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We plan to go live right then and just carry out and have a show and have different voices come on. Guys like Stone, guys like myself, guys like Craig. We're trying to get some other Bengals fans and some Bengals beat writers on the show, but it's proven a little difficult just with schedules and obviously other fans and people that do this sort of thing also want to be active at the trade deadline. So we'll see what we can do, but we're going to go live regardless at 4 p.m. to talk about all the moves or moves that the Bengals do not make. And I mentioned yesterday on the show that I don't know where my headspace would be if come 4 p.m. today, the Bengals don't make one of the next 3 following moves, which is trade Trey Hendrickson, fire Zach Taylor, or fire Duke Tobin. Like, I genuinely do not know where my headspace would have been, knowing fully that it was more likely that all 3 of those guys are still a part of this organization come 5 p.m. today than the latter, or than the other alternative, which is any one of those guys are no longer with the team. But the Bengals do make a move. And they trade a guy that was a captain on this defense, a guy that was part of the resurgence of the Cincinnati Bengals. If you recall, back in 2019, the Bengals team, in 2020, the Bengals linebacking crew was the worst in the NFL, which probably rings home here if you've watched the Bengals play this year. And part of the solution was to draft Logan Wilson in the 3rd round out of Wyoming. And from the get, his rookie season, in which the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, he made some big plays. Obviously, the interception of Ryan Tannehill in the AFC divisional game where we beat the Titans and went on to the AFC championship game. He's the one that knocked the ball loose, I believe. He's the one that knocked the ball loose the following year in the wild card game against the Ravens at home that Sam Hubbard returned for 99 yards. I believe it was Logan Wilson that knocked it home. And the point blank is about Logan Wilson is if you've been a fan of this organization, of this franchise, then Logan Wilson has been a big part of the happiest moments that you've had recently. He has been a major stalwart on that defensive unit. And over that 3-year stretch from 2021, 2022, and 2023 where the Bengals looked really good when all the pieces were together, Logan Wilson was as center of that defense as you possibly could be. He was making big plays that we'll never forget. And there's a reason why he earned a second contract that a lot of Bengals fans will lament because it was the move to take Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt over Jesse Bates. And obviously Jesse Bates is one of the premier safeties in the league and was with the Bengals and continues to be with the Atlanta Falcons. And obviously we are here in 2025 and Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson are no longer with the Cincinnati Bengals. So in hindsight, that looks to be a bad move. But I'll say this. I think if you go back in time, I think most teams would make that same move to take 2 linebackers that were proven over 1 safety that was elite. But I digress. When Logan Wilson asked for a trade a couple weeks ago, it felt more so likely that he'd be traded than a guy like Trey Hendrickson and McKinley Jackson that just asked to be moved. And we were right. Trade to the Dallas Cowboys. And Logan Wilson has been our best. He's been our best linebacker this year. He has been. Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter, according to Pro Football Focus, are the worst linebackers in the NFL. I think it's 88 linebackers graded, quantified for long enough to be in the starting role. And they are 87 and 88 they're the last 2, the bottom 2. Logan Wilson has graded very well. It was week 1 against the Cleveland Browns where he had a really good game. Just a few weeks ago against the Green Bay Packers, he played pretty well. And there's been some lean moments in between where he hasn't looked like his former self. And last year, he didn't look like the same Logan Wilson that rightfully earned that contract extension. But he's going to get a new lease on his NFL career to go to a place that, there's not a bigger brand in this sport. There's not a bigger brand in North American sports than the Dallas Cowboys. And he's going to get a chance to improve the second worst defense in the league. Now, I'm a Cowboys fan, and this news comes across that you trade for Logan Wilson. Initially, you're like, oh, yeah, he used to be a good player. But then you realize this guy got benched for the 2 worst linebackers in the league. I am interested to see where Cowboys fans' brains are because they're similar to a spot that we're at where they have this elite offense, but their defense is just pathetic. And they're grasping at anything that might help improve their defensive unit. I will ask this question, and we'll get to Craig Sandlin here in a second. I'll ask this to Stone. Knowing the return, I think I was on board with trading Logan Wilson. I said yesterday, get rid of all the pieces. I want as many draft picks here in Cincinnati, and I want a new coach, and I want to, kind of start new. Knowing the return, a 7th-round pick, would you still make the deal?
I would, yeah. I totally would. Bottom line is, I know there's a bit of a cap hit that the Bengals are going to take on here, but they were going to take on that hit regardless because Logan Wilson wasn't in this team's plans for 2026. So the opportunity to get a draft pick, now obviously people are going to be like, well, you don't know what you're doing that deep in the draft anyway. You're not going to turn it into a good player. And that's fine. Maybe that becomes true. But I think, the whole process, and we talked about it yesterday, was trying to stockpile some picks. Logan Wilson, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he should be appreciated for his time here in Cincinnati. I think this team could use more Logan Wilsons as it relates to drafting, right? This was a third-round pick, and he was a great pick for Cincinnati. I know this thing didn't end the way that I wanted it to end, and much of the fan base didn't want it to end. We sat here last week and ripped him for his trade request, and I don't take anything back what I said. I think that was still ridiculous that he requested the trade. But when you look at his tenure here in Cincinnati, he absolutely deserved that second contract. The Bengals gave it to him. And, the writing was kind of on the wall when they took two linebackers there with, early picks that they were kind of phasing off of Logan Wilson. So, I think the reality of the situation is this team could use more Logan Wilsons. And I don't have an issue. Look, it's the people that thought they would get, a fifth-round pick for him, you could maybe hope he would have gotten a sixth. But, you're getting a draft pick back. He requested the trade, and you're going all in on your rookies here, and we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, it's more than a fair criticism about the return that the Bengals got. A seventh-round pick for a guy that was, like I said, has made as big of plays for this franchise as anyone has in the history of this, the 56-now-year history of this franchise. There's a short list of players that have made bigger plays and bigger moments than Logan Wilson. But in the same jest, if the idea is that he's not going to play anymore and you want to build around these rookie linebackers that you drafted, then you got to get rid of him. You got to get rid of him. And we're going to have Craig Sandlin on, the adjunct professor of Chatterbox Sports. Craig, thank you so much for spending your morning here with us. We talked a couple weeks ago about Logan Wilson after he requested a trade, and we put some benchmarks on what you'd want in return or you wouldn't pull the trigger. Now we find out that they trade him to the Dallas Cowboys. They get a 7th pick in return. So point blank, knowing the return that you get, would you get rid of Logan Wilson for a 7th-round pick?
I mean, it's one of those questions where the conversation is more about the money, I think, than it is about the player, right? And, I think that was one of the difficult conversations that we were having. We weren't really talking money. We were talking about the veteran leader on this defense that really lacks that veteran leadership at times. And so I'm in a position where I probably wouldn't have moved away from Logan Wilson as my starting linebacker to begin with. But I think once the Bengals made that decision and stood by that decision, I think the answer to trade him was inevitable at that point, because you're not going to pay a backup linebacker $6 million a year to be on your roster. And so whether I would have done it for a 7th rounder or not is kind of a moot point, because quite frankly, I wouldn't have benched Logan Wilson to begin with. But here we are, and the Bengals made the move, and I think once they benched him, the writing was on the wall, and it was a trade that probably had to happen is probably the best way to put it. And whether you like the return or not, it is about as much as you were going to get for a guy that the new team has to pay $6 million a year for the next 2 years. So you take what you can get at that point, and the fact that it wasn't just a pick swap is probably good enough for me at this point.
Let me ask you this question then. Last year, part of the noise around Lou Anarumo and getting rid of Lou Anarumo was he wasn't playing young guys. That's what everyone was saying. He's not playing the young guys, and this defense is bad. Let's try something else. Let's get these young guys in here. You said that you wouldn't have benched Logan Wilson. Do you find that to be like conflicting principles? And if a veteran's, and he's a better linebacker than Barrett Carter or Demetrius Knight showed this year. But if he still wasn't good, he still wasn't a really good linebacker. If he wasn't getting it done, do you find it kind of a conflicting principle of, hey, last year we wanted to play these young guys, now we're wanting to play these young guys, but we should have still played Logan Wilson? Do you find that conflicting at all?
Well, I think it depends on the conversation, right? I mean, we had guys in Geno Stone who were completely subpar performers last year that continued to get run in a position at safety that the Bengals needed desperate help at. And I understand that conversation, but I think there's a difference between playing your captain on defense and playing aging veteran who was clearly not performing to the level that you needed them to. And Logan Wilson may not been to the level that you had it previously, but he was still a perfectly fine, serviceable linebacker. He had lost a step in coverage. There was no doubt about that. That was the biggest knock against him at that point in the season, though. I mean, if you look at PFF grades and you watch the film, from a tackling perspective, he was probably the best tackler on the team still.
Tall task.
I don't know if that's really saying that much.
Tall bar.
But the truth of the matter is that in the run game, he still provided a decent defense in that situation. Coverage was soft, but again, you're asking now rookie linebackers to come in and try and pick up the ball there, and probably not fair to ask that of them either. And so I get it. I understand that conversation, but Logan Wilson probably would have been my starting linebacker at least through the year. And then we could have a conversation this offseason. Maybe he gets a release and moved on from, or maybe he gets traded in the offseason. But I still think that he would have provided the best opportunity to succeed in this core at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. I look at the tape and I look at the PFF grades, and realistically, Logan Wilson was your best option, and now he's not on your team.
Let me ask you this question. So you mentioned that the bigger news is the money that they saved, and that's certainly a big part of why they made this move and why they're willing to just bring back a 7th-round pick. Are you confident that the money they are? Let me in anything. No, are you confident that the money that they're saving here and getting rid of Logan Wilson can be spent towards improving this defense in the offseason?
No, I mean, I'm not confident in anything that the Bengals do. And we were having a conversation this morning in our group chat about even the Trey Hendrickson, if he were to walk in this offseason, what would a comp pick look like? And Casey made the point that comp picks are based on, the talent that you lose and the talent you bring in. And just the idea that the Bengals would replace a Trey Hendrickson with the level of talent that would, anywhere negate a potential comp pick for Trey Hendrickson is funny to me. The fact that they would replace Logan Wilson's talent or anything like that is also funny to me. I mean, we look at this past offseason, their two biggest signings on the defensive side of the ball were TJ Slaton and Oren Burks. And that's not meant to be a knock to either one of those guys. They've both been fine in their roles, but to sit here and act like they're going to replace a guy who's been one of your primary playmakers on the defensive side of the ball for the last 3 or 4 years is probably not likely. And you're certainly not going to do it with the 7th-round draft pick. I didn't go back through and look to be able to confirm this, but odds are your 7th-round draft pick in the Duke Tobin era, I'm not sure that you've hit a single one of them to the level that Logan Wilson performed. So, no, I'm not confident in it. And there's also the dead cap hit, which Spotrac is reporting that in 2026 will be $4 million. So that means you're basically saving $2.5 million next year. You're saving $7 million in 2027. So, no, I'm not confident in that. And the truth of the matter is that I don't know what they're going to do with Trey Hendrickson still. And so that's the bigger money question is what happens with Trey Hendrickson for the rest of this year and beyond, because I think the plan right now, and we'll talk about this at 4:00, but I'm expecting Trey Hendrickson to be on this team, and I'm expecting them to tag him this offseason because I still think that they think he's part of the solution in getting them back to the playoffs and hopefully to the Super Bowl in the near future.
I cannot do another tag Trey offseason. I can't do it. But it seems like
it's going to happen, though.
Well, so let me ask you this. Let's do that. Do you think there's another move that the Bengals make before the end of today? Do you think that they make another move? And it doesn't have to be Trey. It could be McKinley Jackson. It could be whoever, BJ Hill, whoever you got on the list of names that the Bengals can move. Do you think the Bengals will make another move by the trade deadline today?
I mean, what kind of a move are you going to get for McKinley Jackson at this point? You just got a 7th rounder for Logan Wilson. You think you're going to get anything?
A 2046 6th round draft pick.
Yeah, I don't think so. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think it's going to be very similar to the trade deadline shows that we've had with the Reds in the past, where they make a couple moves early on in the day or whatever it may be, and then we sit there during an hour and a half long trade deadline special, and the Reds don't do anything else. So I'm expecting something similar this afternoon. I think Logan Wilson most likely was the end of it. We put out a graphic yesterday of a list of players that the Bengals could or should look at moving. I firmly believe that if they really want to be serious about competing in 2026, because 2025 at this point is lost, that you might as well move on and try and stockpile picks for this offseason and just hope that a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while and that Duke Tobin can find somebody late in the draft that can actually contribute to this team, because history says that that's not exactly something that you can bank on.
Live in fantasy land with me then. And the Bengals are very active here in the final hours of the trade deadline. And they move Trey. They move all these sorts of pieces. Do you think that would signal an end of the current regime here for the Cincinnati Bengals or not?
No, I think it would be actually the opposite. I think you would be looking at the Bengals are trying to set this front office up with as much ammo as possible to go out and be successful this offseason. And that includes saving them money to be able to go out and spend it in free agency and giving them as many draft picks as possible to go out and try and rebuild the roster with youth. And so, no, I actually think it's quite the opposite. And at this point, if they didn't fire Zach Taylor yesterday, I certainly don't expect them to do it this offseason, because I think we've all seen it a million times at this point. Zach Taylor is going to find a way to rattle off 5 or 6 wins down the stretch here, save his job as a mediocre football team, and then he'll be back next year with maybe an extension. I think I said that on a previous show where I wouldn't be shocked for them to give Zach Taylor an extension this offseason, which is insane as he goes into his final year of his deal. But no, I don't think that a lack or anything. I don't know that anything really signals anything regarding the regime. I think Duke Tobin is here to stay. I think Zach Taylor is here to stay. I think Katie Blackburn, Mike Brown, the entire family are here to stay, obviously. And so, no, I don't expect that any of this signals anything other than they have faith in themselves to reload utilizing the money that they save if they do move anybody and the draft picks that they accumulate. And that's it.
Yeah, on the roller coaster that has been the Cincinnati Bengals season this year, last year, the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, actually, because the last 5 years have all just been crazy in their own right. It feels on par with what we've seen from them, that they win 3 of their next 5 games, which is their toughest 5-game stretch of the season, and then they beat the Bills or they beat the Ravens twice or something crazy like that, and all of a sudden we're bringing it back. Before last week, you said to me that if they lose to the Chicago Bears, you want Zach Taylor gone Monday. Obviously, that didn't happen. I rolled my eyes at you last week. I truly did. I was like, dude, they're not getting rid of Zach Taylor. And then I saw the game, and I saw what transpired, and it was another embarrassing loss. And I laid out on our post-game show, I laid out yesterday why exactly I think Zach Taylor needs to go, because you do not deserve to keep your position of power if you are embarrassed 6 out of 7 weeks in the National Football League, especially with the aspirations that this team had. That point being said, what percentage, get a crystal ball out, what is the percentage that you think Zach Taylor is going to return as the head coach next year? Is it incredibly high?
Yeah, 87%. I'll throw a random number out there. I mean, I'm very confident that Zach Taylor will be back as the head coach next year. I think there's certainly scenarios that you could see playing out where he doesn't return. I think mainly around a completely lost locker room, around some sort of conflict with Joe Burrow. If him and Jamar lose their relationship, but I think at the end of the day, Zach Taylor is an offensive mind with a culture mindset as a head coach. And I think that this Bengals front office hired him for a reason, and he's done what they wanted him to do, and that is maximize Joe Burrow. Well, I mean, obviously they hired him before Joe Burrow, but maximize this offense and create a culture around this locker room that is bought into being a good team. And I think for better or for worse, everything we've seen is that culture does exist. And certainly we're starting to see the cracks. I know we have talked about that before with some of the comments from guys like Chase Brown, and Jamar Chase doesn't necessarily say the wrong thing, but he certainly shows his frustration. You certainly saw the video of him walking back to the locker room after the game against the Bears, and him showing his frustration with the defense in that scenario. So there's definitely signals that maybe that could fall apart, but my gut tells me that Zach Taylor maintains the culture that he has, which ultimately I think is the exact same reason he has the relationship he has with the front office, is because he's a yes man. He does what they want him to do. He doesn't really make a whole lot of noise. He's soft spoken, and they allow, they have him in the palm of their hands to just continue to do the Bengals way, which is not spend the money that they could spend, not push players to extend their contracts at the timely manner, all of these things. And he's, we talked about it on the show on Sunday, because I think someone put a super chat in there, but he's a his players are a personification of him. And we went from a Marvin Lewis era that was kind of hard-nosed, and you had some guys in the locker room that maybe weren't the best guys in the locker room, but by golly, they were going to play their hardest on Sundays, and they were going to give you their all, and that may result in some silly penalties or unsportsmanlike conducts, but they were going to go for it. And I think right now this Bengals team could really use some of those hard-nosed, defensive-minded, hard hitters that maybe they've had in the past that they don't have anymore. Jordan Battle certainly seems to want to be one of those guys, but he doesn't have the power to actually knock a tight end on his butt when he makes a catch over the middle. So here we are. But yeah, just I think that Zach Taylor is exactly what the Bengals want in a head coach, and that's a yes man, and so he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it is funny because that chat was absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This team, every organization, every sports team, whatever, takes the personification of their leader, and it's clearly that this team isn't what it once was, and part of the reputation of the AFC North was how hard-nosed it was when guys like Marvin Lewis and Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh were all there, and every single AFC North game was just as much of a car crash as you could possibly imagine in the NFL. You mentioned something about the Chase Brown comments that Zach Taylor made yesterday. Obviously, Chase Brown made his own comments following the game. A lot of Bengals fans had some opinions on what Zach Taylor had to say about Chase Brown. What did you make of Zach Taylor's comments on Chase Brown's comments?
I mean, my reaction is exactly the same for every comment that Zach Taylor makes. That's a Zach Taylor comment. Like every single comment he gives is so cookie cutter. It's That's so right. By the book. Like it's what you would expect a coach to say, but when it's the same thing you've heard every single day for the last 6 years, it just becomes minutia at this point. Like, that's not how we want to react. One of our best players, our high character players, saying that I don't expect it to happen again. I love Chase. Like, it's exactly what you would expect from Zach Taylor at this point in his career. Like, there's zero gall to call someone out publicly. And whether we agree or disagree on anything, what I think we heard about with the Reds a lot was a lack of accountability in the locker room and in the clubhouse in baseball, right? And so they fire David Bell because they didn't feel like they had that accountability, and they go and they get Terry Francona, who probably went too far with accountability, if we're being honest. And now I think you're seeing something similar with the Bengals, where at least publicly there's very little accountability for some of the things that happen, not only performance-wise, but then things like Chase Brown's post-game comments, where we know that the Bengals defense is not performing to the level they need to be. And rather than Zach Taylor call that out, he avoids it. He talks about the offense didn't have a chance to put the game away. He talks about, we got some things to clean up. Well, no kidding, Zach. Like, everybody's watching the game. We know there's, quote, things to clean up, but we're tired of hearing that. Like, I think someone in our social team is probably going to put together a little clip of Zach Taylor's go-to comments over the last 6 years, and they haven't changed, and they won't change. And, I don't know that I've ever really seen Zach fired up, and that's unfortunate because sometimes I think that's necessary. And you'll hear from the best coaches out there that they love hard and they coach hard. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they can coach hard is because they love hard. And there's got to be that balance. And right now, I don't see any coaching hard. I see a lot of loving hard. I don't see any coaching hard. And if you build up that rapport with your players, they'll respect the hell out of you if you do coach them hard. They want to be coached hard. But Zach Taylor, that's just not his MO. And maybe his assistant coaches are doing it somewhere where we're not seeing it. But, man, at some point, there's got to be accountability. And right now, I'm not seeing it.
Saying that the Bengals need to clean some things up would be like taking a batch of Merry Maids to a town that just had a tornado run through it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up, Zach. No, it's funny. I had a take on the Chase Brown comments, and it's funny that you said you can coach hard if you love hard, because that's absolutely true. The coaching and leadership is all about the relationships that you build. Like, you've got to have some sort of a relationship there to be able to push a player, to push someone that is beneath you to the point that you want them to be. And it's funny because it seemed like Zach was going to do that. It seemed like Zach was calling out Chase Brown and was saying, like, that cannot happen. He had some bad plays, which he's right. Like, you cannot Chase Brown, what he said was correct, but also Chase Brown, you can't make those comments because you had 2 plays in the game that were huge. The opening drive where you dropped the pass, that would have been an easy first down, and we ended up having to kick a field goal. That can change the complexity or the complexion of that game if you make that play, Chase Brown. So it kind of falls on deaf ears when you're the one calling out the defense when you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. But that being said, Zach Taylor clearly was kind of gearing towards calling out Chase Brown, but he didn't have the gall to hold out with it because at the end he starts gassing him up, right? He makes the comment about it and says, yeah, he can't do that. He had 2 bad plays, and I let him know that. But he's a really high-character guy, and we love him, and we know how talented he is. And it's like he gets to the point, but then he backs right on back and can't stick the criticism. It doesn't have the same sting when you completely just lift up the player right afterwards. You can coach hard and you can love hard, but you've got to do those. You can't do them at the exact same time, and that's where Zach seemingly falls short at some of these press conferences. Go ahead.
There's this theory of like the Oreo theory, right? When you're trying to give someone negative feedback that you don't want to offend them, you start with a positive, then you sandwich in the negative, and then you end with a positive again. And that's fine in the corporate world and some of these other worlds. That's not what you would expect in a professional athletic setting. Like, it's just not. Like, there's zero world where a professional athlete needs to hear positive affirmation every single day when they know behind the scenes that they are not performing to the level that they need to perform. And I think what is difficult is that you're starting to see that lack of accountability from Zach Taylor filter over to some of these players. And I understand part of it where, these players are frustrated and they don't want to say something stupid, and so they decline media availability after games. But, like, be a man. Step up. You're paid millions of dollars. I cannot imagine that you can't come up with a couple words to acknowledge the fact that you didn't play to the level that you need to play to. And instead, you tell media guys, oh, we'll talk to you on Monday. I'm not going to talk right now. Like, that is exactly the world that Zach Taylor has created, where players feel like they can avoid media availability after a game because they don't want to say something that they don't want to, regret later on. Like, it's just, I don't love the culture we have right now. As much as it's great that guys like Zach and want to play for Zach, It's just I don't think that right now with a young team like this that it's working. And we talked about Al Golden when he was hired about the need to develop young players, and they need to be coached hard, and they need to be developed. That's not happening. And the fact that we're 9 weeks into a season and we're talking about them tackling dummies at practice to work on fundamentals is insane.
A few years ago, I made the comment on Off the Bench or some chatterbox thing that I was okay with the direction that the Cincinnati Bengals are going because it's clear that it is opposite of the rest of the AFC North, where Kevin Stefanski, Mike Tomlin, and John Harbaugh all have these defensive-laden, hard-nosed, run-the-ball kind of football teams. We were going in the opposite directions. And oftentimes, if the rest of your competition is zigging, you zag and you can find some success. There's going to be some things there. But we've now seen what was the worst-case scenario, which is, for lack of a better word, for a pardon my inadequate lexicon, but the team defense feels a little soft. And it feels like they aren't as hard-nosed to the umpteenth degree as the rest of the teams in the division, and you're seeing the worst-case scenario for having that kind of high-flying West Coast team that the Cincinnati Bengals have. Craig,
it's really easy to outscore everybody else like the Bengals did early on in Zach Taylor's career when nobody else is focusing on offense. But to your point, everybody is focusing on offense now. I mean, some of them do it better than others, but even the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are one of the most notoriously hard-nosed defensive-minded football teams in the NFL, even when they're going out and putting up 30 points a week, it just tells you where the NFL is today. And at some point, you've got to adjust to that. And putting up 40-plus points is great, but when you're allowing 47, it doesn't benefit you. So something's got to change. Maybe we'll be the first to zag back to a defensive-minded output. I don't know, but it can't continue the way it is because it clearly is not working out for the Bengals, and we've seen that the last 3 years now.
No doubt about it. Craig, I'll see you later on today. Thank you so much for hopping on here.
All right, man. Have a good one. Oh, and real quick, I've never once have owned a Vineyard Vines shirt. Thanks.
Man, what a dagger. Hey, Stone, check
Good to see you too, Craig.
Stone, check your email. Check your email.
Oh, yeah. Well, why we got Craig? I got it right here.
Oh, look at that Vineyard Vines t-shirt. Styling and
let's get Craig's thoughts on that.
What do you think about that shirt?
I mean, I'm just shocked that you don't have a double collar that's sticking up underneath it too. Maybe that was before your time, but back in my day, all the cool kids went double popped collar. That was really the sign of the cool kids. So
the 3-6 Mafia popping my collar ever since I could remember.
Yeah.
I think that's 3-6 Mafia. Thank you so much, Greg. See you later.
Yeah, we had two polos on, and then we had a pair of basketball shorts on under our jeans because you never know when a game's going to break out.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
All right, man. We'll see you guys later.
See you, Craig.
See ya.
Let me see that Vineyard Vine shirt again, and let me see what's your reaction of this outfit. So it's cotton candy pink, cotton candy blue, and yellow shorts underneath. Your thoughts on this attire?
I respect it. To be honest with you. I mean, this is high school, right?
I was a freshman in college. Okay,
well, maybe that's a little bit later than I would have liked to hear, but yeah, I respect it. I mean, you're throwing on. Was this just a random day, or was it some kind of occasion?
It was my birthday, actually.
Okay.
It was my birthday, and I celebrated it watching Baden High School baseball game.
Okay.
With my now wife. That's my
I mean, I respect the boldness of it. I really do. I respect the boldness of it. I wouldn't want. This is kind of a one-off. Like you wear it once, then you maybe don't wear it again type thing. Like if you were wearing this like every Friday to school, I'd be like, that's a little.
I think that might have been the last time I wore that shirt. Like that shirt did not get good use. I got it from my now wife Mariana for my birthday. I think I wore it then maybe one other time. And then that was the end of the cotton candy multi-faceted colored shirt. So thank you so much for that gift, honey. I wish I would have worn it more. You know what's funny is we ended that interview with Craig, and this is something that I mentioned, and I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job of expressing my thoughts when it comes to kind of the mode that the NFL is heading towards. Everything in this copycat league is punch, counter punch. You're going to be an offensive-laden team. We'll be a defensive-laden team. And it was pretty clear that over the last decade, the 2010s, with the rule changes, with everything that the NFL was pushing, that offense was the way to win. And we saw that immediately with guys like Sean McVay going to the Rams, and they immediately look like Super Bowl contenders. And Patrick Mahomes going to the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid, and they look to be the cream of the crop. Whereas in decades prior, you could still win with having the best defense in the league and, having a competent offense. What the 2012 Baltimore Ravens did with Joe Flacco, what the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers did with Brad Johnson, what the 2000 Baltimore Ravens did with Trent Dilfer. That was possible. That didn't seem possible over the last 15 years. But because of everyone throwing the ball more and passing the ball and having these high-flying offenses, what has happened now is all these defenses have gotten smaller. Speed is the name of the game. You listen to any NFL podcast that talks about a game right after and a defense doesn't play well, the first thing they notice is they didn't look quick enough. They look slow. Logan Wilson, what's been the complaint about him this year was that he looked slow. He had lost a step in coverage. How important that is. All these linebackers, they're not Ray Lewis anymore. They're not 6'3" and 260 pounds. What they are is a little smaller, about 220 now, because they've got to be quicker. These cornerbacks and safeties don't hit. There's no Ronnie Lott's out there anymore. What they are, they're smaller. They've got to be quicker. They've got to cover more. And it's pretty clear that while the entire league is doing that, there's now going to be a shift because that's the way the defenses are. There's going to be a shift into, hey, we're gonna run the ball 40 times a game. And we are going to just be bigger than you and stronger than you. And because your linebackers are 220 pounds now, because your safeties are no longer 200 pounds now, we are going to be able to run for 200 yards a game. And then there will be a shift back to the other side. The defense will inherently, because you've got to now defend the run, we're going to have some big nose tackles again. And we're going to have big linebackers again. We're going to have big safeties again. So it's just punch, counter punch, and I'm waiting for the shoe to other drop in the NFL to where offense is no longer the name of the game. Hey, can we get defensive guys? Can we be hard-nosed? Can we get back to where the league was in 2008? And then 10 years down the road, it'll flip right on back because that's how it is. It's a boxing match. It's punch, counter punch, punch, counter punch. What can you do? How can you counter the way that the modes are league? In the winners, where the fortune is made in the National Football League, where it is made is the guys that are able to get ahead of the curve. The people that can see the next trend in the NFL before it happens. Teams like the Los Angeles Rams that are going to hire the Sean McVay young offensive mind. Teams like Andy Reid did, and they get rid of their quarterback that took them to 5 consecutive playoffs, Alex Smith, who was a good quarterback, because they've got this young, phenomenal guy who can scramble around the pocket, and now that's what everyone wants. They want a mobile quarterback like Patrick Mahomes are. Who's going to take what is the next curve? And who's going to take it? And I don't know about you. As a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I don't have any confidence that we will ever be ahead of the curve. At least not with the current ownership and the current front office and everything that the Cincinnati Bengals have tend to be or have shown to be throughout their 56 years of existence. Craig Sandlin, thank you for joining us so much. We will go live tonight or today at around 4 p.m. to talk about the trade deadline. Maybe there'll be some more news. Maybe there will not. The plan is to have a bunch of people coming in, coming out, dropping in 15 minutes, dropping out 15 minutes, and hopefully we have a fun show for you guys for that one. Stoney.
What's up?
I sent you some buy or sells.
You did.
I sent you some buy or sells. I started to do a big Bengals podcast once again. We'll be talking about some college basketball and some other things around the league tomorrow. But today we're sticking here with the trade deadline news in the Cincinnati Bengals. Stone, buy or sell?
Buy or sell. Besides DJ Turner, the Cincinnati defense has future stars.
Selling this one. That's where we're at as a defense. That's where we're at as a team. I see one player as it currently sits. There might be someone develops out of a Demetrius Knight or a Barrett Carter. I've lost all hope in other guys. But it feels to me that we have one guy at this very moment that I feel confident that I'm not talking about a starter. I'm talking about a guy that you know that other teams have to game plan for. Teams are game planning for DJ Turner right now. People have had to game plan for Trey Hendrickson in the past. People have had to game plan for Jesse Bates in the past. People have had to game plan for Logan Wilson when he's at the peak of his game. DJ Turner is the only guy that's being brought up in an opposing offensive coordinator's meeting room. So, yeah, I'm selling this. We do not have any future stars on this defense. We might have some starters. We might have some guys that can fill holes, but no one that an opposing team is going to center their game plan around going forward. Stone, what say you?
Yeah, so totally. Unfortunately, I have trust in any of these guys. You know, like you said, maybe a stopgap option is kind of your high-end hopes here at this point. And DJ Turner's on a heck of a run. Hopefully he can continue with that. Hopefully he can be a guy for several years for you. But other than him, like, who can it be? You know, Jordan Battle has flashed at times, but, I mean, how bad was that last play? That's going to stick in the mind of
Sure.
fans for years. Declining to speak to the media, too, after that. People kind of looked at Jordan Battle. Like, maybe he could be kind of a leader on this team. Well, if you're going to decline to speak to the media.
Is your mic on?
Haven't done that since first show.
First show.
Here we are.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
It's all right. Can you
So
concise your
basically
thoughts?
Absolutely not. I'm selling this totally. I don't see anybody that could potentially become a star for this team. Besides DJ Turner, he's strung together several good games here. You hope that's not a fluke. You hope he can continue to do that for this team. Maybe have some stopgap options of guys that can step up and be serviceable for you. People had high hopes for Jordan Battle, but I think, what transpired at the end of the Bears game, that's going to forever stick in the minds of Bengals fans for quite some time. He declined to speak to the media there as well after the game. That's not a good leadership tendency there. So, yeah, I'm totally
Is the mic still having trouble? So is it being double?
No, the mic's on now.
All right.
Mic's on now. Should be.
All right. Next, buy or sell.
Let's see here.
All right, I hear you.
Buy or sell. Shamar Stewart is a bust.
I never want to declare something finite after just seeing 9 games.
And you missed several.
Yeah, he has missed several. So he's played, what, 5 games? 5 games? He's probably missed 4. Yeah, 5 games. I'm selling this not because I don't see the trajectory. And the trajectory is that it's an all-time bad pick just by the way he's playing. By the way that teams reacted when we drafted him. He's getting thrown around and looks completely incompetent. But he's clearly huge. He's clearly big. He's clearly fast. He's clearly athletic enough to play the position. But can he play the position? I'm selling it not because of anything I've seen, but because it's just too soon. We'll revisit this at the end of the year, though. I'm selling this as it is right now.
I'm buying it. He's cooked. He can't play. You took him at 17 overall. You needed to take a guy that was a safer pick. You didn't. You rolled the dice on a guy with a high ceiling but a really, really low floor, and he's hanging out near his floor right now. As a guy who couldn't get any sacks in college, couldn't get any tackles in college. That's continuing here. He's running in the wrong spot. But this is, above all things, the reason why I'm ready to label him a bust. I mean, the attitude stinks. What did he do this offseason? Came in as if he was some guy that had played downs with the Cincinnati Bengals, that knew what was going on and had contributed to this team, and was acting like he was, the next great thing, and causes all this drama in the offseason. Finally sort of gets his way, comes out there, and what's he do? He absolutely stinks. This was a guy that they needed to come in and be productive right away. He hasn't done that. His character stinks. His leadership stinks. And this is a whiff, and I'm almost ready to cut bait here at this point. Obviously, you got to play it out for the rest of the year, but this is a disaster of a pick for Cincinnati, a type of pick that can set you back as a team a year or two, to be completely honest with you. Shamar Stewart, swing and a miss.
Yeah, it's funny. Every April now for the past 3 years, ever since Chatterbox has been doing this, we get excited. We spend months talking about who the Bengals could select with their pick in the draft, who the Bengals can circle. And it feels like every single year they subvert any inclination or any idea of where we're going and pick someone completely off the beaten path, and you're just like, what the heck is going on? And yeah, that's what they did with Shamar Stewart. And the clips of Shamar Stewart playing the game of football in the National Football League for the Cincinnati Bengals as a first-round pick, a mid-first-round pick at that, are amongst the worst clips I've seen in any sport ever from someone that is supposed to have so much promise. But I'm not selling yet. Next buy or sell.
Miles Murphy is a bust. Buy or sell?
I've seen this now for 3 years. Yeah, I'm buying. I mean, yeah, what are we saying? Like, we drafted him. He was a consensus top 10 overall pick at one point in that draft cycle. They were like, this guy has the ability, this guy has the talent, and he fell all the way down to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals took him, and now we are in, year 3 of Miles Murphy?
Yep.
And we haven't seen a single iota that makes you think that this guy can be a competent player. So, yeah, I mean, this is as slam dunk as you felt like Shamar Stewart is. That's how I feel about Miles Murphy. He's pretty clearly a bust.
Yep, totally agree. Swing and a miss again. Another first-round pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. Another disastrous one at that edge rusher spot, right? And, the first year he had some injury issues, and you're like, all right, maybe he needs to be more of a project-type guy. We'll give him some time. Last year, what did he do? Nothing. This year, what's he doing? Nothing. He's weak. He's slow. He can't get to the quarterback. He's not athletic enough. He can't get guys on the ground. Doesn't look like a first-round pick at all. To be honest with you, I don't know if he looks like a 6th or 7th round pick either. Complete swing and a miss from Duke Tobin. Long list of swing and misses. And if you're going to swing and miss late in the draft, you can get away with that. But if you're going to consistently swing and miss in the first round, you're not going to be able to overcome that. I got a lot of belief in Amarius Mims. I think he'll be fine. In fact,
I agree.
I would like him to switch over to left tackle next year and cut bait with Orlando Brown Jr.
You don't like seeing him choke out players in the game?
Yeah. But apart from that, I mean, what have you done in the first round here recently? I mean, we're holding on to some hope with Dax Hill, but we just said we don't think there's any other stars besides DJ Turner, right? So, Miles Murphy, swing and a miss.
How smart does Zach Taylor think he is, or Duke Tobin think they are? Because the last 2 picks in the draft have been Shamar Stewart, who had 4 sacks in his entire college career as an edge rusher, and Amarius Mims, who played like 3 games at the college level. I mean, they just think they're smarter than everyone else in the league, don't they? And it's pretty clear that they're not. Pretty clear they're not. All right, next buy or sell.
Buy or sell. Zach Taylor will be the head coach next year.
Oh, man. You know my opinion on this. That I do not want him. I don't want him to be the head coach by the end of this show, which is in 4 minutes. Like, I don't want him to be the head coach then. Clearly is. And I was actually sold. I convinced myself in my brain that he was not going to be the head coach by the end of this week. Clearly that was, the dumbest thing I maybe have ever thought. And yeah, he's going to be the head coach next year, isn't he? He's going to be. He's going to. I'm buying. He's going to be the head coach next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Craig hit this perfectly. Unless he loses Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase, which is funny because you talked about the Chase Brown comments yesterday, and then he was like, yeah, I would like to see more what Jamar did, which what Jamar did wasn't great, but he didn't, directly, I guess, throw anybody under the bus. So if he can keep Joe Burrow in his corner and keep Jamar Chase in his corner and win a couple of games, they got 3 wins right now. He's got to get to at least 5. And you look at their schedule, and there's a lot of losses up there, and I don't know if you could really convince any of us that they're definitely going to win any of these games. So he can't lose out. I think he's got to get to 5, maybe even 6 wins, but I fully anticipate him being back next year. And it'll be year 2 of the big-time contract for Jamar and T. Hopefully Burrow's back and healthy, and we'll see what the defense looks like, but fully anticipate him being back next year.
All right. I think we're in the same boat. We'll finish buy or sell there, right there.
Okay.
We'll get to the other buy or sells some other time. They're pretty evergreen topics. And one of them is regarding whether or not, if Zach Taylor was going to be the coach here next year, what this offense would still look like. So we'll get to that some other time. I'm a lot more calm today than I was yesterday. Obviously, yesterday was a landmark day in terms of just letting emotions fly, just letting them just rip off, just firing at the hip and letting them fly. But I still hold that this organization cannot be taken seriously if they do not make serious franchise-altering changes by the end of today. And trading Logan Wilson isn't a franchise-altering change. You have to get rid of Trey for third, fourth, whatever it is, because he's not going to be here next year. You've got to cut bait with the money. You got to cut bait and get as many picks in as possible. Or you've got to get rid of one of the director of player personnel in 1999, Duke Tobin, or Zach Taylor. It's an embarrassment what it is right now. I just don't know how you can continue to hold a job when you've been embarrassed in the National Football League 6 out of the last 7 weeks with not like a team that had expectations of going 3-14. That wasn't the expectation of the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, if the Saints did what the Bengals have done over the last 7 weeks, yeah, sure, whatever. Who cares? If the Jets have done what the Bengals have done over the last 7 weeks, yeah, sure, whatever. Who cares? The Bengals had actual aspirations to get into the postseason, and not only get into the postseason, but make some noise. And that still is the mode. Like, just get on the dance floor, and we can boogie with the best of them because we got Joe Burrow in an offense that can play with anybody. But it's been an absolute embarrassment over the last 7 weeks. And we can say that, oh, they did it without Joe Burrow. They don't have Joe Burrow. Fair criticism. But I'll also ask you this. If Joe Burrow's here, if Joe Burrow played on Sunday, did they win that game? Joe Flacco threw for 470. Maybe we have one less turnover? If Joe Burrow plays over the last 7 weeks, what's this team's record? I'll tell you, it's not 6-3. You're not flipping it. You might get another win somewhere, maybe 2 wins. I guess 5-4 is a lot better than 3-6. Regardless, Stone Shield Show coming up 4 p.m. today. Trade deadline Chatterbox Bengals show. We'll see you there. See ya.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here on a Tuesday. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us after Off the Bench and into my show here at 11 o'clock. Today, of course, is the NFL trade deadline. That is hours away. And for the second consecutive year, Cincinnati active at the trade deadline. News broke this morning from Adam Schefter. We kind of speculated. We thought Jerry Jones went out there yesterday, of course, owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, and said there will be a trade. And a lot of us thought, I think that's going to be Logan Wilson heading off to Dallas. That, in fact, was the case. Question is just what exactly was the compensation. I think a lot of people were hoping it could at least be a sixth-round pick. That's kind of what my gut said. My gut said you probably get a sixth-round pick for Logan Wilson. Ultimately, that does not end up transpiring. You only get a seventh-round pick, but you kind of add. We talk about kind of needing to stockpile some picks here based on the state of this defense and really just the state of the Cincinnati Bengals organization here at this point, and they get one, and it's a late day 3 pick, and it's not much, but it is something, and it was a move they absolutely had to make. They make it. They move off Logan Wilson, and we'll spend a lot of time here on today's show talking about that. We'll see if any more moves come for the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of us, myself included, would like to see them move Trey Hendrickson. Doesn't seem like that is going to be the case here at this point. I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, yesterday we saw Howie Roseman go out there and get an edge rusher from the Dolphins. He gives up a third-round pick to get Jalen Phillips. You definitely could get a third-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. Potentially maybe even a second-round pick, but Diana Rossini of The Athletic came out yesterday saying the Bengals are pretty stubborn here and still are asking for a first-round pick. And when you're talking about Trey Hendrickson giving up a first-round pick at his age, he's been hurt this year and is looking to get paid a big-time contract this offseason. Very unlikely and nearly impossible. I'll just flat out say it. Impossible. No shot. You can get a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson at this juncture, and apparently the Bengals have not budged off that, according to Diana Rossini. So we'll talk deadline. Again, that's coming up in a matter of hours here. The plan is that we will go live here at the channel at Chatterbox Sports, have a bunch of people cycling in. That's kind of our plan right now with Reed Mouse, so stick around for that. Probably going to have a live show later this afternoon. We'll talk Bengals. We'll talk Logan Wilson. We'll talk NFL trade deadline. Also, our NFL power rankings here going into Week 10. 4 of our 5 teams last week lost. So a big-time shakeup at the top. The Kansas City Chiefs obviously lose. You look down, next thing you know, they're 5-4. We'll see if they still stick around in my power rankings. Got a new team at number 1, and this is going to ruffle some feathers a little bit. A lot of people are going to be coming up my neck for who I have at number 1, but I believe it. I believe it. I think I got the number 1 team correct, and a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at it, but looking forward to breaking that down. Hugh Freeze, of course, former head coach of the Auburn Tigers, he was fired, and now you look around college football and you go, oh my goodness, we got some big-time jobs that are open. Obviously, the 2 noteworthy ones, 2 most noteworthy ones. I guess you'd say 3. Throw Penn State in there along with LSU and, of course, Florida. Now joining the mix is Auburn. Auburn, make no mistake, not nearly as proud of a football program as they once were, as Hugh Golden's record. I mean, he was 6-16 in the SEC during his time as the head coach. That is absolutely unacceptable. The Stanford job, of course, they've got an interim tag on Frank Reich. It was kind of a last-minute decision there for him to be the guy this year. They're going to be looking for a new coach next year. Virginia Tech, of course, open there as well. Arkansas also open. So we'll go through some Hugh Freeze replacements. We've done it for the LSU opening, the Penn State opening, and the Florida opening, and we'll talk about some of those names here on the show. Also, Kyler Murray. It was interesting kind of tracking that story yesterday because the report came out from Schefter that, okay, Kyler's going to be okay. He could potentially be available to play last night in Dallas against the Cowboys. Next thing you know, he's not playing. Next thing you know, he's not dressed. And they roll with Jacoby Brissett, who, by the way, outplayed Dak Prescott in this football game. And Dak Prescott is playing at the highest level he has played in his NFL career. Jacoby Brissett went out there, outplayed him on the road, won the football game. I think things are over for Kyler Murray as it relates to being the trigger man of the Arizona Cardinals offense, former number 1 overall pick, and I think the writing's on the wall. He's not going to be an Arizona Cardinal next year. That's just kind of my thoughts. We'll spend some time talking about that. Also, Terry Francona is a nominee for Manager of the Year, or a finalist, I should say. 3 guys, Pat Murphy of the Brewers and, of course, Rob Thompson of the Phillies. Not really sure why he's in there, but it kind of feels like Murphy's going to win the award. But I know there's some people in the fan base, as it relates to the Cincinnati Reds, are saying that's the right thing, and there's some people that are saying that's absolutely crazy, and it is 100% the right thing that he is a finalist for that award. We'll spend some time talking about that as we close today's show. But let's start with Logan Wilson. Let's start with the Logan Wilson trade. Again, back-to-back years, the Bengals are involved with a trade at the deadline. I think a lot of us here at this point, we're looking at our phones, we're refreshing our feed, we're hoping to see another move for the Cincinnati Bengals and hoping that it isn't just this Logan Wilson move. Again, I kind of thought Cincinnati could potentially get a 6th-round pick for him. That ends up not being the case. You can only get a 7th-round pick for Logan Wilson, but this was a move that needed to be made. Why? Well, when you look at the Bengals and where they're headed as an organization, their plan was to move off Logan Wilson. And that decision was made in Green Bay when you put him on the bench, where you sat there and you said, we're going with Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. You can probably rewind that a little bit and say, oh, actually, that decision was made on draft night back in April when you took Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter with 2 top-of-the-line picks, basically saying, you know what, these are our guys for the future. We're allocating top-of-the-line resources to them, and we're going to phase off of Logan Wilson. And Logan Wilson, his career here in Cincinnati, I was really hard on Logan Wilson. I ripped him apart last week. I stand by everything I said. I don't regret any of it. I think in the situation you were in, where you still had a chance, doesn't really feel like you have a chance as far as the postseason goes, but when you requested the trade on the heels of the Steelers game, kind of feels like you had a chance, and I thought it was selfish, especially for a captain, to go out there and do that in the middle of a season. I stand by that, but now he's gone, right? He's no longer a Cincinnati Bengal. I think if we can step back and kind of evaluate Logan Wilson's tenure as a Bengal, and an overwhelming success, to be completely honest with you. This is a guy you took in 2020 in the 3rd round, and we talk about Cincinnati and they're just whiff after whiff after whiff. When it comes to their draft picks, Logan Wilson wasn't a whiff. He came in here and he started immediately. He was a guy that you could rely on from a leadership standpoint. I understand, requesting a trade, that's not very leader-like. I totally get that. But through his career to this point, he always did what was asked. He was very professional. He said all the right things. He made big-time plays. He stepped up in big moments. Right, think about this team. Right, in 2021, going to the Super Bowl, I don't think they get there without Logan Wilson, to be completely honest with you. And Logan Wilson is the guy that was in what I think is the most unfortunate play in the history of this franchise. Obviously I've got some bias, right? I've got my black and orange stripes on at all times, but I don't think that was defensive holding. I think the Cincinnati Bengals win the Super Bowl if that call isn't on Logan Wilson in the Super Bowl. So people are always going to remember that play, of course. I think he got hosed. Thought the way he handled the situation after the game was very professional, and he 100% deserved a 2nd contract here in Cincinnati. 100%. And we talk about it all the time, specifically along the offensive line for this Bengals team, where you have guys that are drafted, they come in, and you're moving off them. You're not giving them a 2nd contract because they just aren't good enough. Not the case for Logan Wilson. Absolutely deserved that 2nd contract. That tandem with Jermaine Pratt, it ran its course a little bit at the end of the 2024 season. That didn't end up working out, but he got really solid years from those 2 guys at that linebacker spot. And I'll always look at Logan Wilson with a lot of respect. Kind of a bad taste in our mouth for how it ended. Again, I thought it was selfish to do it when he did it, and I thought he deserved to be ripped apart for it, which is exactly what we did here at Chatterbox Sports. But now that he's gone, I think you can sit back and kind of look at his whole career here in Cincinnati and say, you know what, that's a success. The Bengals could use more Logan Wilson-type players. If you have more hits like that in the 3rd round of the draft, you're going to get back to being a contender for the Super Bowl if you can find more Logan Wilsons. But obviously, really, since Logan Wilson, you haven't been able to find a lot of them. Now, Logan Wilson was Al Golden's guy. I don't know if he comes back and takes this job without Logan Wilson, to be honest with you. Right? What Al Golden did for Logan Wilson, in his early years, he was such a good player as a rookie. He came in and immediately was good. And you're like, wow, this is a linebacker that's got some speed. He can tackle the running back. He can guard the tight end. And he's got the ball skills of a safety. This is a really, really good player. And then he had some injuries, right? I think maybe he gained a little weight, which maybe slowed him down a little bit. He wasn't as versatile of a player. He started missing a lot of tackles, lost a step, again, had the injuries. So, his career started out so good, and then it kind of slightly went downhill, but not to the point where he didn't deserve a 2nd contract. I just think we saw him in those early years and thought, man, this guy's going to be a superstar. And it didn't exactly live up to that hype. But again, this wasn't a 1st-round pick. This wasn't a 2nd-round pick. This was a 3rd-round pick, and for the most part, he came in and did what was asked for him and did a really nice job. And the only negative takeaway I have is the bad taste in my mouth with him kind of requesting a trade, right? That's not something you want to see from your captain, not a guy that wears a C on his chest and is one of the leaders of your team. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, but overall was really pleased with Logan Wilson, and the Bengals need to find more Logan Wilsons if they want to have success. We'll see if they make any other moves. Obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we plan on going live around the deadline. I don't know if they will add somebody or get rid of somebody else. You only get a 7th-round pick for Logan Wilson. Could you get a 7th-round pick for Cam Taylor-Britt? CTB has struggled. He's been benched, right? Similar to Logan Wilson. He was a higher draft pick because you took him in the 2nd round instead of the 3rd. But that's kind of the guy I've got my eye on. Again, I hope that they trade Trey Hendrickson, but it doesn't really seem like that is a decision they are going to make here at this point, as they're kind of holding on to hope that that he'll come back and help them win some games and be a foundational part of their defense. Craig Sandlin mentioned this. He anticipates if he sticks around that they'll tag him again this offseason, and we'll have more drama with Trey Hendrickson, which that just makes me a little nauseous, to be completely honest with you. I don't know if I can deal with another Trey Hendrickson drama-filled offseason, because the reality of the situation is this: even if you have him out there, he significantly elevates your defense and he puts you in some positions to win games and close out games, right? And I still stand by that. If he was out there against the Jets, he was out there against the Bears, you probably win those games. But the reality of the situation is you are just so far away from being successful on the defensive side of the football. Even if you have Trey Hendrickson out there, it's still not even close to being good enough. And that's why I think they need to make a move off him here at this point. But Logan Wilson traded for a 7th-round pick. Hopefully more trades happen by the time this particular segment comes out on YouTube, and we can have another live show talking about it. But Logan Wilson traded to the Dallas Cowboys, 7th-round pick. It was the right move. A little disappointed you couldn't get a 6th-round pick, but you got to begin stockpiling those draft picks a little bit. Obviously, you lost a 5th-round pick. It was a pick swap, of course, from the Joe Flacco trade, but that was a later pick. Now, all of a sudden, I believe you have 2 6ths and 2 7ths, which for the Bengals, that doesn't excite you at all, right? I think teams around the league, there's been plenty of players. You look around the landscape of the National Football League, plenty of tremendous players that were picked in the 6th and 7th round. How about this? Kyle Monungai, didn't even mention this on yesterday's show. Completely forgot to do this. The running back, right, for the Chicago Bears that absolutely ran through you and torched you. That was the pick that you gave them in the Khalil Herbert trade, that exact pick. And they took Monungai in the 7th and said, yeah, we'll take him with your pick and then beat you because of him. So that was just, one of those just all-time Bengal moments, right? You have so many moments with this team where you're just like, you got to be kidding me. That's one of them right there. In the game, right, Zach Taylor challenging it and becoming a touchdown. Again, right move to make that challenge if you're Zach Taylor, but that's just Bengal activity right there. If something like that happens to you. Monungai, same type thing. That's a great pick, though. You see him. Obviously, everybody looks good against the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's like, Monungai, he looks like a solid back in the league. He doesn't look like a workhorse, doesn't look like a 1, but a guy that can be a rotational guy that can fill in when your starter is out. You see that with him. Bengals haven't really seen that with Taj Brooks, right, as a rookie. Certainly have not seen that. It took Taj Brooks before Monungai, of course, went in the draft. But, stockpiling late day 3 picks probably doesn't excite many people in the fan base, and I completely understand that, especially when Duke Tobin's the guy picking who you take with those spots. Now, maybe we'll see. Maybe there is a change as far as the director of player personnel goes. That's not going to happen today, right? There was no chance that was going to happen. Craig Sandlin, Reed Mouse talked about this on Off the Bench, just kind of to echo some of those sentiments. I know a lot of people are frustrated with the top, certainly the ownership. People have been frustrated with ownership for as long as I've been alive, number one. But people frustrated with Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin, I get it. I don't see any changes being made at the top. Just don't. To be very clear here, I've said this as my stance. I think the Bengals need to move on from Duke Tobin, and I think you give Zach Taylor another opportunity. I know that isn't the most popular take. That's just kind of my opinion, but I don't anticipate either one of those guys being relieved of their duties unless this thing completely blows up. Right, you look at their record right now, they only have 3 wins. And you look at their schedule, and you're like, you got Baltimore twice, you got Pittsburgh again, you got New England, you got Buffalo. You got really good teams here over the course of the next several weeks. You got to find a way to win a couple of games, right? And I've been pro Zach Taylor, obviously, for a while, but if he loses out, if he doesn't win another game, if he doesn't get to 5 wins, I think it's going to be hard for this organization, this ownership group, to keep him. right? I fully believe that they believe in him and want him to be the guy. But if you don't win another single game the rest of the way, which is a possibility, by the way, especially when you look at this Bengals schedule, I think that could become an issue. But at this point, I don't anticipate them making a move like that. I think the move that we all can hold on to hope for that they could potentially make, possibly, is Trey Hendrickson, moving him, but it doesn't seem like that is going to happen either at this point. I would like to see, even if they're not going to move Trey Hendrickson here at the deadline in a few hours, got to move off, somebody else on this defense. Get somebody else out of here and get another late-round pick. Cam Taylor-Britt kind of stands out there. Noah Fant, potentially. Noah Fant's done a nice job, but maybe you could get some draft capital back for Noah Fant, right? I mean, you're not going to the playoffs, right? You have Gesicki under contract. I understand he's hurt, but Gesicki, when Burrow is back, that's going to be your guy there at that tight end position, the tight end position that goes out and is like a receiver position. Of course, you got Drew Sample as kind of that blocking tight end, but I think Noah Fant was a great acquisition. He's been a good player for you, but I think you can afford to move off him at this point because you're not going to make the playoffs, and he doesn't seem like a long-term piece. So that's another potential guy that you can move. But we'll continue to refresh our feed, and we'll continue to try to figure out, if Cincinnati's going to make another move. And, of course, we will have that content for you here at the channel if that does end up transpiring. All right, let's talk power rankings. We do it every Tuesday morning here at the show. And as I mentioned at the top, we've got some significant shakeup at the top of our power rankings here this week. 4 of the 5 teams that we had at the top last week lost. Right, 4 of the 5 teams lost last week, so we have a significant shakeup at the top. We'll go 10-1 as we always do here on the show. Your comments, your feedback, very much encouraged. Get down in the live chat if you're watching with us live, and this video goes up on YouTube every single week there as well. Feel free to get interactive in the comment section as well. Here we go, 10-1, our power rankings here going into NFL Week 10. At the number 10 spot, I have the Denver Broncos. Look, I had Denver at number 10 last week. They won again. They beat the Houston Texans 18-15. Don't look now, but you look down at their record and you go, oh, wow, this team's got 7 wins. And I've got a lot of belief in Denver. I am a big Sean Payton guy. That defense is unbelievable, and they've got some skill guys on the outside. But Bo Nix has held them back a little bit. I was very high on Bo Nix when Denver took him in the first round a couple of years ago, and I think he's going to be a really solid quarterback, especially if he continues to have the tutelage of Sean Payton. But things have just not yet to click offensively for them. He had a good game a couple of weeks ago against Dallas, but only 18 points in this game against Houston. I understand DeMeco Ryans, Houston, they have a really good defense, and they cause issues for lots of teams in this league. But this is several games now where you look down and go, and this offense kind of anemic a little bit for Bo Nix and company. He's not using his legs enough, I don't think. He's trying to throw the ball down the football field, and he's flat out being inaccurate with the football. So I have my concerns about Denver at this point. Right now, I view them as a team that makes the playoffs and loses immediately. Mind you, C.J. Stroud got hurt in the first quarter last week. I think if he plays the entirety of that game, Houston probably wins this game. Of course, that was one of our best bets of the weekend. Rough week for that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But, yeah, Denver, they stay at 10. It's another win. They have an impressive record. But at this point, I just view them as kind of a one-and-done in the playoffs. At number 9, the Kansas City Chiefs. I've had them at number 1 for a couple of weeks, and they certainly come back down to earth here on the road against Buffalo. Of course, playing a really good Buffalo Bill team. They lose 28-21. Now you look down at their record and go, hey, they're 5-4. If they stub their toe a little bit here, mess up on a game, they could be in some serious trouble, especially if Denver continues to win games. But the reason I have the Chiefs above the Broncos, look, if they played in a game, an all-or-nothing type of game, the Chiefs are going to win that game. Absolutely no problem there whatsoever. My biggest takeaway from the Chiefs-Bills game was probably more so being impressed with what Buffalo did defensively than being turned away necessarily from what Kansas City was able to put out there on the football field. But the reality of the situation, they have 4 losses, and they have a tough schedule on the horizon there as well. Now, with their offense is clicking with Mahomes. Rashee Rice coming back is absolutely huge. He's a bona fide one. We've said that several times on the show, and I think they're going to continue to take steps in the right direction. I think they're going to win some tough games. But look, Bills, Chiefs, Allen, Mahomes, particularly in the regular season, that's a go either way type of situation. And really in the regular season, Allen's had a ton of success against Patrick Mahomes and company. So when you have a 5-4 record, you got to bring them down significantly in your power rankings. I still think they are going to be a threat. I still think they are going to be an issue. But there was a little bit of consideration. Do you drop them out of the top 10? But I'm sitting there looking at them in Denver. And it's like, Denver's won more games. They got to do good defense. But is there any way that you think in an all-or-nothing game Denver would beat them? The answer to that question is no. At number 8, got the Detroit Lions, another top-of-the-line team that lost last week. Last week I had them at number 3. They now have a 5-3 record here. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings. And J.J. McCarthy, it's a huge win for him. He missed a couple of weeks with an injury. He comes back, plays good enough to get the win in the game. I don't know if necessarily Dan Campbell and company sleepwalked into that game. But when you're playing Minnesota, you got a really good head coach in O'Connell and a really good defensive coordinator in Brian Flores. And despite the fact they've had issues at the quarterback position, you need to take them seriously on a week-in and week-out basis. And it didn't look like offensively they were clicking like we're typically accustomed to seeing for the Detroit Lions. I didn't expect J.J. McCarthy to be able to put up that many points, but when you have O'Connell calling the shots for you, it can work out. And I'm really concerned about the back end of that Lions defense. We saw when the Bengals played them several weeks ago. If you're a good quarterback and you've got a good offensive play caller, you can expose them on the back end. And I think that happened in the Detroit game. We'll see if ultimately that holds them back. The offense not quite as much firepower as we had seen in recent weeks. And now the question for me is, where's this Detroit team compared to where they were at last year? As they were kind of going on this run here and getting used to new coordinators and no Ben Johnson and, of course, no Aaron Glenn, it looks a little bit different, but I thought they were almost just as good this year. Now I'm starting to have some concerns on whether or not that is the case. They lose to Minnesota. Their record drops now to 5-3. I've got them at the 8th spot here in our power rankings. At number 7, the Seattle Seahawks. Time to really start recognizing them as a team that is a threat in the NFC. I think they make probably a little bit too many mistakes, too many mental errors, too many procedural penalties, some turnovers there as well. But Sam Darnold, we'll see. J.J. McCarthy had one good game. I don't anticipate that to continue. If I'm Minnesota, I'm kicking myself for letting the Seahawks outbid us for Sam Darnold, but he's playing well. JSN is a 1, obviously. There were some questions about that, but he clearly is a 1 here for the Seattle Seahawks, with DK Metcalf, of course, leaving for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that defense is real, man. It's one of the best defenses in the National Football League. Mike McDonald has done a tremendous job. You talk about young coaches in this league, and he's got the defensive background there as well. McDonald's going to be in place there in Seattle for quite some time. He's done a terrific job. John Schneider, he's right there at the top of the line when you're talking about the top GMs in this league. He has done a tremendous job on that defense. That's a Seattle team. They fly around. They make plays. They're tough. They're physical. They're young. They're athletic. And you look at that division, man, and I think that's becoming maybe the most fun division in football when you're talking about the Rams, of course, the Seahawks, and the Niners, despite all their injuries, find ways to continue winning games. Seattle did not have them ranked last week, but they 100% deserve to be in the rankings here this week. Give me the Seattle Seahawks at that number 7 spot. Coming in at number 6, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I've been really high on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We said going into the year, don't be surprised if they're playing in the NFC title game. They've had some injuries, right? No Mike Evans. I don't know if it's season ending, but it was a serious injury. Maybe he could come back for the playoffs, but that is huge, right? Mike Evans is one of the most underrated players of my generation, to be honest with you, and it was a security blanket, of course, for Tom Brady and was, again, for Baker Mayfield. Ibuka's a little banged up. A lot of people view him as a potential rookie of the year type of guy offensively here in the NFL. They were idle this week. They didn't play a game. Last week I had them at 8. They get bumped up a little bit due to some losses around them. They're 6-2. I'm a little bit concerned with the injuries. Baker is banged up, but of course he's playing through it as he always does. I view Tampa as a threat, but no Mike Evans. That's a problem, and I don't necessarily trust Todd Bowles as some of these other coaches on top teams in this league. So I've got them at 6. But they still need to show me a little bit more here as we progress. They kind of just reap the benefits of some other top-of-the-line teams losing, so they get bumped up to the number 6 spot. Colts at number 5. A lot of people banging on me for having them at 2 in recent weeks, saying they should be number 1. They lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm not hitting the panic button at all. If I'm the Indianapolis Colts, they're going to win that division, no problem, and I still view them as a team that's going to win a playoff game there as well. I think people kind of were writing off the Steelers a little bit too prematurely. I understand the issues they got defensively. That got cleaned up to some degree, right? But Mike Tomlin at home was an underdog with Aaron Rodgers playing at a high level despite the fact he's 41 years old. That was a good spot there for Pittsburgh to pick up a victory kind of with their backs against the wall. A huge win for that. And, it's more of a takeaway for me of, okay, Pittsburgh, they're not dead in the water yet. They're still kind of a threat in this thing as it is of, the Colts are in serious trouble. So the Colts are still one of the best teams in this league. They dropped down a few spots with that loss on the road to Pittsburgh. Still view them as a really good team, not hitting the panic button whatsoever for them. Jonathan Taylor, he kind of had he was stymied a little bit in the game compared to how he had performed in previous weeks. He was kind of looked at as an MVP type of guy. Didn't have that type of performance against Pittsburgh, but I'm not worried about the Colts at all. Steichen's got him in a good spot. Daniel Jones doesn't look like the Daniel Jones we're accustomed to seeing over recent years. I got the Colts at number 5. At number 4, give me the Buffalo Bills. I talked about this last week, how it feels like Buffalo for me this year is kind of back to the Buffalo of like 4 or 5 years ago, where it's like, I don't know if it's a complete football team. They're just relying on number 17 to be spectacular and put on that cape. Well, they kind of showed that, they're doing some things, right? They can run the football a little bit. And, with Cook there, obviously, in the backfield, they can get some stops. They can get off the field on third down a little bit. I really like what McDermott's done with that defense here. It started out pretty ugly defensively for Buffalo. And when you hold Patrick Mahomes and company to 21 points, that's a really impressive performance. So I'm not ready to put them at the top here of this list, but Buffalo, that's a big-time win against the Kansas City Chiefs. It showed me a lot. And now I think they, enter the conversation as this, the best team in the AFC. When you're talking about teams like the Indianapolis Colts, I think the Broncos, the Chiefs, all can be thrown into that category. I think right now, you can make the argument that the Bills are the best team in the AFC. I'm not ready to say that right now because there's another team in their division that has already knocked them off this year. We'll get to that team here in a matter of moments. At number 3, the Philadelphia Eagles. And they skyrocket, and they didn't play a game. But, look, Philly's fine. They hit that, some minor turbulence there earlier in the year. They lose the game on a short week to Jackson Dart, kind of his coming out party, but they've responded in a big way. That offense is clicking. Patello starting to settle in as their play caller, starting to trust Jalen Hurts a little bit more, doing a great job throwing outside the numbers. Devontae Smith having a tremendous year, as always. And in the wake of, Saquon Barkley not necessarily repeating his performance from last year, you've had guys on that offense that have stepped up. There's dudes all over that defense. You had a GM and Howie Roseman. That guy's a psychopath. He's out trading for Jalen Phillips, right? Now you're going to pair him with Jalen Carter along your defensive line, right? He's going out and getting Jair Alexander, who wasn't even really dressing for Baltimore, to see if they could perhaps find something with him. They needed to go out there and get a corner. They're rolling the dice here with Alexander. I love the move, honestly, from Howie Roseman. Just a well-oiled machine there in Philadelphia. So they didn't play. They didn't do anything to deserve to be bumped up from last week. But I just started looking at the teams in this league, and I was asking myself this question. Who's going to beat Philly, right? Philly's a really good team, top to bottom, defensively, offensively. Say what you want about the head coach. He wins games. They're going to be a threat in this thing to the very end. I think there's a chance that they could potentially repeat as Super Bowl champions. At number 2, the L.A. Rams. I think it's time that Matthew Stafford starts getting a little MVP love for his performance here so far in 2025. He's done a tremendous job. McVay, obviously, all-time coach. And that defense, Les Snead, the GM, did a tremendous job building that defense. That is a team that is very much a Super Bowl threat. Look, they beat the crap out of the Saints. That's not saying much, right? You could argue the Saints are the worst team in this league, 34-10 victory. But there was some games earlier on in the year. We all were high on the Rams. I was high on the Rams. I think they're going to play in the AFC or the NFC Championship game this year. But they were just kind of, playing with their food maybe a little bit, not dominating games where I felt like they should go out there and dominate, and that kind of held them back a little bit. But I'm ready to put them at the top of this list here again. I had them at 6 last week. Lots of teams around them lose. They improved to 6-2 on the year. And, just a back-breaking loss against Philly early on the block kick. Just kind of a fluky loss there, to be completely honest with you. It's a Rams team that very well could only have one loss here at this point. If Stafford can stay healthy, they're going to be a threat in this thing. And we talk about, Mahomes and Drake May and, guys like that, Jonathan Taylor for MVP. But time to start giving Matthew Stafford a little bit of love. I love watching him play the game. And I'll be honest with you, in 2021, he wins the Super Bowl. I kind of had, a bit of a vendetta against Matthew Stafford for a couple of years after the Super Bowl. And then, as time's gone on, I sit there and I watch. And not very many people this day and age play the position at that kind of level. And the fact that he's got the arm that he still has at this stage of his career is unbelievable. Cherish the time that we have getting to watch Matthew Stafford. He is an all-time talent. He's a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I've got the Rams at number 2 here this week. Told you I'd ruffle some feathers. here with my power rankings. That's exactly what I'm going to do right now. Not very many people, if you take a look nationally or other people, on YouTube or on the radio, not very many people, I don't even think many people in Boston would have the Patriots at number 1, but that's where I have them. This team's real, man. They are absolutely real. Mike Vrabel, that is a hire that was hit out of the park. Drake May, yeah, talk about him for the MVP. I understand they messed around late in that game against Atlanta. Don't love that, right? 1-point victory there in that game. You look down, they're 7-2. They have a huge win against Buffalo. They're winning games that they should win. They're protecting home field, and their schedule is very favorable here on the horizon. Don't be surprised if we see the Patriots and the Bills duking this thing out in the AFC. I think that is a very real possibility. I think there's a chance we could see these teams play a total of 3 times this year. Obviously, they're going to meet once again in the regular season. Don't be surprised if they meet again in the postseason there as well. This team's real, and you got guys on this team that hadn't necessarily stepped up in previous years. Vrabel comes in, has kind of unlocked some guys. Say what you want about Josh McDaniels as an offensive coordinator in New England. He is terrific. What he's done with Drake May is awesome. The run game's starting to open up a little bit. I would like to see them get the ball to Henderson a little bit more. They were kind of riding the hot hand. Obviously, Stevenson, was out there as well. They're still kind of working through the run game. Drake May does a terrific job using his legs. If he can continue to be a quarterback that runs for like 50 yards a game, they're just going to continue to take steps in the right direction. That defensive line, they've got dudes on that defensive line who push opposing offensive lines back. Got some questions on the back end of their defense, absolutely no doubt about it, and that's probably why people would say, oh, you're crazy for putting him there at number 1, but I believe it. I've been in on Drake May this whole time. I've been in on Mike Vrabel this whole time, and now it's time to have him at 1 in our power rankings. How about it? The New England Patriots at number 1 here going into Week 10. There you have it, my power rankings here this week. As always, get down in the comments section. Would love to hear your feedback. Sure, some people will be, a little bit blown away, I guess, is a nice way to put it, that I have New England at number 1. But that's how I feel right now. I look at the top to bottom here. Could you put the Rams or the Eagles over them? Yeah, but I've been in on the Patriots this whole time, and I'm ready to put them here at number 1. We'll see if they can continue that positive momentum here at this point. All right, Hugh Freeze was fired at Auburn. The coaching carousel in college football this year really is incredible, right? Big-time jobs are open. Obviously, LSU, Florida, Penn State, that's kind of a tier above some of these other openings. I think at one point maybe you could throw Auburn into that category there. That's not the case anymore. Auburn is very much the little brother in the state of Alabama, and they have been for quite some time. And, from a recruiting standpoint, it's hard for it to be a top-of-the-line job when you have another school in your state that's going to get the majority of the best recruits. And Auburn's done a fine job recruiting. They take guys from Alabama all the time. I understand that. I'm not disrespecting them. But when you look at LSU, there's no other competition in the state of Louisiana, right? Florida's a little bit different. Of course, you have Florida State and some other teams there as well. But you don't view Auburn as a top-of-the-line job, especially because they've been such an unserious program for several years, right? I mean, your past 2 hires were Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze. I mean, whoever made those decisions, I don't know who their AD is. I don't know who pulled the trigger on those hires. But, I mean, what are you doing? Brian Harsin, just a disastrous run for him. And then you hire Hugh Freeze, this guy that has a long list of scandals, and really your only reasoning for hiring him was, oh, yeah, he beat Nick Saban a couple times. Yeah, we'll give him the job. And that was literally it. That was your reasoning for hiring Hugh Freeze. We all knew from the very beginning that this was going to be a complete disaster. There was no way this thing was going to work on the plains there in Auburn. And after a couple of years, obviously, he's fired. Auburn hasn't had a 10-win season since 2017. That is absolutely ridiculous. 6-16 in the SEC under Hugh Freeze. Absolutely ridiculous. And, you can sit here and say what you want about his offense, Hugh Freeze's offense for the Auburn Tigers. I think the big thing is that he never hit on a quarterback, right? He could not figure out the quarterback position. And if you consistently whiff at that position, I don't care what level. I don't care if it's high school. Obviously, the NFL, college football there as well. You're not going to be any good. If you just can't even get mediocre quarterback play, you're going to be horrible. And that's kind of the situation that Hugh Freeze has found himself in. And I thought their performance last week against Kentucky was kind of a perfect microcosm of their season here to this point, right? They went away from Arnold, they benched him, and then they put him back in the game, and then they benched him again. That's just like, you don't know what you're doing doing at that position, right? You had opportunities, right? Angeli, before he got hurt, the backup at Notre Dame last year, he goes to Syracuse. This thing would have looked a lot better with him. I understand he's hurt, but it would have looked a heck of a lot better with him. Obviously, Mendoza, right? If you threw the bag at Fernando Mendoza, could you potentially have a chance to get him over Indiana? Maybe. I'm not saying. I think Indiana certainly intrigued Mendoza very highly, but, he was a guy that you could perhaps, thrown some money at. Instead, deal with Jackson Arnold. Yeah, good call there, Hugh. Really nice call there for Hugh Freeze, but didn't win enough games. It was a disaster. The fan base completely lost faith in him. I don't know if they ever had faith in him, and we'll see ultimately who Auburn goes after here at this point. $15.8 million buyouts, not quite the Brian Kelly, James Franklin type of level, but that is, Hugh Freeze. He's going to kick his feet up. He's going to make millions of dollars, and he's not going to do anything. He's not going to get a big-time job ever again. Credit to him right after the scandal at Ole Miss and the kind of how the mess as far as that ended. And he won some big games at Ole Miss. Mentioned he beat Saban a few times. Yeah, congrats on that. But then he kind of worked his way back up, went through the mud there, went to Liberty, won a lot of games. Then Auburn was ready to roll the dice on him. And, obviously a complete disaster. For Hugh Freeze. Big thing, didn't get the quarterback position right, ever. And if you continue to miss, especially in that league in the SEC, you got no shot. And ultimately, Hugh Freeze had no shot. So, I think there's certain programs in college football that are just, when they're better, they make college football better. And to me, the top-of-the-line programs, when you're thinking about that, are USC, right, and Notre Dame, and, Miami, right? We'll talk about the Canes maybe later in the week. Disaster for Cristobal. We all thought maybe this was finally the year that they actually weren't fraudulent. They turns out they still stink. But I feel like Auburn's kind of in that a little bit. It's like college football, the SEC feels bigger when Auburn is good. And Auburn hasn't been good in forever, right? They haven't been good since Malzahn, and it was Gene Chizik before that. Of course, they won the title with Cam Newton, but it's just been so long since they even been a threat in the SEC, right? You're always talking about Georgia and Alabama as the class, then you throw in, teams like LSU, of course, and Tennessee, and, Florida for a couple of years. They've kind of been down and out for a while, but we haven't talked about Auburn as a threat in quite some time. And if you're going out there losing to Kentucky, I mean, you're in deep trouble. You're in deep trouble if you're the Auburn Tigers. So I want to run through some names here on the show, and some of these are names that we've thrown around in the past. We've done these replacement segments in the past, and we'll throw around some more names. Is there a couple new guys? Potentially, we'll throw them into the mix. But the name number one here, and if you've paid attention to this at all, this job opening there at Auburn, is John Summerall. And Summerall, of course, is the head coach at Tulane. He has head coaching experience. He's been at Tulane now for a couple of years, won a lot of games, was at Troy before that, won some games, has some experience in the SEC, was at Kentucky for a little bit, was at Ole Miss for a little bit. Quick side note on Summerall, the Kentucky job, it seems like Stoops just wins a few games every year and they bring him back at Kentucky, but Kentucky is his alma mater. The Auburn football job, much better than the Kentucky football job, but if the Kentucky job were to come open, would he potentially prefer that? I don't know. But, we've thrown Summerall's name around there for all these jobs. I don't think, if you're LSU, you got to go pretty down on your list in order for you to bring in Summerall. Same for Florida, right? But I think this Auburn job is kind of a perfect fit for John Summerall. Now, again, if you followed this at all, everybody is saying, yep, John Summerall, he's the next guy. He will be the next head coach of Auburn. And usually when everybody is out there saying it, you might want to pump the brakes a little bit. It might not be the best thing. You might want to sit here and do your due diligence and think about it a little bit more. But I think the world of Summerall, we'll see how he finishes here with Tulane. Did just drop another game there as well. But I think he's ready for more of a bigger job. I don't think he's ready for LSU, Florida, Penn State. That's a little too big for me. But Auburn, I think he could come in here, stabilize the program, and bring him back to national relevance a little bit more. So that's the top name that everybody is talking about here with the Auburn Tigers, John Summerall of Tulane. We'll see. But again, it's literally, if you look into this at all, everybody's like, oh, that's the guy. There's some pause for some reason to be a little bit concerned if that's the case. But Summerall probably the top candidate for me. Eli Drinkwitz, head coach at Missouri. We've thrown around his name in all these job openings. For what it's worth, if I'm any of these teams, I don't hire him. Right? If I'm Florida, I don't go after him. LSU, I don't. Arkansas, you can try, but do you leave Mizzou for Arkansas? No. Auburn, I wouldn't go after him. Penn State, I wouldn't go after him either. He's won. What he's done at Missouri is, respectable. He's done a nice job rebuilding that program. Feels like they have sort of a chance in the SEC, but I'm not fully in on Eli Drinkwitz, to be completely honest with you. I think especially with Hugh Freeze. He's just a corny dude, right? He's not that alpha guy, and he's just kind of a loser, to be honest with you. Eli Drinkwitz isn't a loser, but he's just kind of a little bit unorthodox. I'm looking for an alpha to come in here and be the next Auburn coach, and someone that's going to take things seriously and understand that there's a lot of work that needs to be done if we want to even consider ourselves the same playing field as our in-state rival, the Crimson Tide. You just need an alpha male to kind of come in here and be the guy. And to me, Drinkwitz isn't that guy. That would just kind of be like, Auburn, what are you doing? Auburn, what are you doing? How about James Franklin? Again, I would not do this at all if I am Auburn, but he gets fired from Penn State, and this was a guy that went on College Game Day, and he was like, yeah, I want to get back into coaching immediately here. I don't want to mess around. I want another job. Couldn't win a national title at Penn State. That's okay. I want to try to go win one somewhere else. And how about it? I mean, all these jobs come open for James Franklin, and, he's going to get calls, right? If you're LSU, Florida, do you call him? A lot of people out there would say they would. I wouldn't personally, right? If you're Auburn, you call him, right? Arkansas, Virginia Tech. Like, he's going to get an opportunity here to potentially get right back into coaching. Again, I think it would be a mistake if Auburn went after him. But James Franklin, certainly a name to keep an eye on. This next guy is interesting, Dan Mullen. I've always liked Dan Mullen, to be completely honest with you. He was the head coach at Mississippi State for a while, had some success there at Mississippi State, and then was at Florida, had some success at Florida, and then, of course, it didn't end well. Stepped away from coaching, was at ESPN for a little bit. Now he's back at UNLV. I think he's done a tremendous job at UNLV this year. I don't know this. I don't have this sourced out. But I think that Dan Mullen is interested in getting back in the SEC and wants another crack at this thing as far as being the head coach of a national powerhouse. Again, if you're Florida, that would be dumb to bring him back. He's not going to get the LSU job. But the Auburn job, the Arkansas job, he could perhaps, throw his name into that ring. The Mississippi State job, we'll see, if that becomes open with Jeff Lebby, if they hold on to him or not. I think Mullen maybe would rather go back to Mississippi State, but you have more resources at Auburn. You have a better chance to win at Auburn. And keep an eye on Dan Mullen. I think that would be a really good hire for the Auburn Tigers. And I think it would take you swinging and missing on a couple of other candidates in order to pull the trigger on Dan Mullen. But keep an eye on him as kind of a dark horse here for this job. I respect the heck out of him. I think he's a good football coach. I think he would bring stability to Auburn. That's kind of what you're looking for, right? Because you can sit here if you're an Auburn fan and say, we need to get back to winning national championships. You're a long way away from that. It ain't even close. Like, you need to get back to, all right, let's try to win 9-10 games. And then we can talk about, winning a national title. And I think you could bring some stability to this program if Dan Mullen is the guy. And look, the crowd, Jordan-Hare Stadium, Alabama fans will know this. That place got some ghosts, man, and crazy things happen there, particularly at night. And, the fans show up. It's a proud fan base. It's a great environment down there. Obviously their basketball program had a ton of success with Bruce Pearl. He, hands the reins off to his son. We'll see if that can continue. But there's no reason Auburn should be this bad, and they need to bring in somebody that, has an idea of what the heck's going on. Brent Key's a name that I've been big on, right? Brent Key, of course, the head coach of Georgia Tech. I think that Brent Key, he better have one of these jobs, whether it's Penn State, Florida, LSU, Auburn. He belongs at one of these spots. I think Penn State is probably the job that stands out the most to me for Brent Key. But if you have an opportunity to call him, bring him in, absolutely. Head coach at Georgia Tech. His team's tough. They're gritty. They're physical. They're disciplined. What he's doing there this year is unbelievable. Again, it's kind of interesting where, people at this day and age of college football, is there a real possibility that Georgia Tech should just say, we're going to pay him. We're going to pay him a ton of money and keep him here? It's more of a possibility now than ever before, and I think you're kind of seeing that maybe at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. What if they just pay him and continue to give him everything that he wants? Would he perhaps stay there? And that certainly is very, very interesting. I don't have Kiffin on this list. The Auburn job came open, obviously, before they brought in Hugh Freeze, and there was talk about him taking the Auburn job, and, it was well documented. I believe there's a docuseries that's kind of out and details a little bit, but Kiffin's like, I talked to my kids, my family. They wanted me to stay here in Ole Miss. I love it here in Oxford, and we decided to stay. So if he didn't take the Auburn job the first time, he's not going to take it this time. When we're talking about Lane Kiffin, it's either he's staying, he's going to LSU, or he's going to Florida. That's kind of where you're at. Auburn doesn't have a chance at getting Lane Kiffin. This next guy, it would be a terrible mistake, and I don't think they should do it, but it's Auburn. Wouldn't surprise me if they did it. That is Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher, of course, had tremendous success at Florida State. Went to A&M, complete disaster. Spent a lot of money on their roster. He recruited fine, but just wasn't able to win enough games. And he's not you talk about guys that are unpleasant to be around, right? And, I think in a lot of ways that can be the tiebreaker for you. Look here in Cincinnati. Zach Taylor's still here. If he was a jerk, would he still be here? No, he would not. But he's a great guy. He's still here. Brian Kelly, if he was a great guy, would he still be at LSU? Maybe, but he's a jerk, so he was gone. Jimbo Fisher he's not as bad as Brian Kelly, but he ain't some angel by any stretch of the imagination, right? So that's kind of interesting. This is, Josh Pate was actually talking about this, and he did a tremendous job covering college football. And he was like, if you're sitting there and you're in these meetings, the name comes up, and you kind of look around at these boosters and are like, okay, we're all out on Jimbo Fisher, right? Like, we're just to make sure here, we're all out. Everybody good? Okay, then we move on. But there might be some, big-time donor at Auburn, right, that's sitting there like, let's see what Jimbo's up to. Let's give Jimbo a call, which would be hilarious if Auburn did that. But it's worth mentioning because some people are talking about that. So that's kind of the list. Clark Lee, you can throw his name into it. I don't view Clark Lee, the head coach at Vandy, obviously. I don't put him I think Brent Key, I view him in a higher light than Clark Lee. He's done a tremendous job at Vandy. They got exposed a little bit in the Texas game, but they came back, made it a 3-point game. So tremendous fight and resilience there. He's going to be a guy that people call, but I don't think he's kind of at the top of that list. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Clark Lee was kind of the next guy at Auburn. And another guy I want to mention here to end this segment is Brian Hartline. Now, Brian Hartline he obviously was a former wide receiver at Ohio State, played a couple of years in the NFL, got into coaching pretty soon, and immediately became kind of the best wide receiver coach in the country, especially from a recruiting standpoint. Now, if you're at Ohio State, you have all those resources. It's kind of expected, but he still deserves a lot of credit for what he has done as the receiver. I mean, think about the talent that he has recruited that has come in there and that are stars in the NFL. All the guys at Ohio State, Brian Hartline had something to do with that here at that wide receiver position. You've heard Urban Meyer talk about this as well, where it's like, it feels like he's ready. His name was thrown around there a little bit for the Boston College job, and I don't think he would leave for a small job, and he's not an SEC guy at all, and obviously a lot of these openings are SEC, and would he go to a Penn State because it's like a rival to Ohio State? I guess not Michigan, but it's, it always seems like it's a big game. Penn State, Ohio State. It would surprise me if he did that. Again, he doesn't seem like an SEC guy there at all, but I think you got to kick the tires on Brian Hartline. If you're Auburn and you've struck out on a couple of your top candidates, I think you sit there and say, well, let's give him a call and see what he can do. Because, I believe that Brian Hartline could potentially be a solid coach in college football here at some point. And, I don't know if I necessarily believe that going into this year, but what he's done calling plays offensively, I've been very impressed. I thought that was going to be something that Ohio State really struggled with because Chip Kelly, obviously elite play caller. He was their guy last year, and now he's gone. How was Hartline going to do his first time calling plays? I mean, that offense is a well-oiled machine for Ohio State. And I get they got all the talent in the world there offensively. But I think Brian Hartline is a guy that some of these jobs need to kick the tires on a little bit. If you're striking out on your top guys, right? If, Lane Kiffin decides he wants to stay. If you can't get Marcus Freeman to leave Notre Dame and you don't have a guy that you fully have fallen in love with, you give Brian Hartline a call. He's had a lot of success. He's a young guy. He seems like a good leader. He's been at Ohio State. He's won at Ohio State. It doesn't get any bigger than Ohio State. And I think he could be potentially capable of filling the shoes of a big-time job. But again, I question, he didn't seem like an SEC guy at all. In the Penn State job, would he go to Penn State? That doesn't seem like that's very likely either. But several guys there on this list. Fascinating. We'll have this college football kind of head coaching carousel. We'll have it covered here at the show as we progress here. But lots of big-time jobs that are opening. And Summerall feels like the guy, right? Tulane coach, but everybody's saying that. And there's always some pause, some reason to be a little bit concerned when that's the case. Monday Night Football last night, Cardinals and Cowboys. Arizona pulls off kind of a mini upset on the road, 27-17. But when you're kind of looking at this game and you see that, okay, Dallas is favored, I think the reason why Dallas is favored is because they had Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott has played an elite quarterback this whole year, has done a tremendous job for the Dallas Cowboys. It really has been incredible because I think this is the best year that Dak Prescott is having in the National Football League. But if you sat there and you said the Cardinal quarterback is going to outplay Dak Prescott, nobody would have Dallas favored in this game. Because you look at the pieces that Arizona has had, they have some solid pieces here. right? I mean, is DeMarcado, is he anything special there in the run game? No. So let's move off that. But you got guys like McBride, and you got Sweat there defensively. You got Budda Baker on the back end of your defense. Marvin Harrison Jr., who was this top-of-the-line pick, supposed to be a star. Well, guess what? He just had the best game of his career, with Jacoby Brissett throwing him the football. 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Pretty hard to believe that's the best game of his career, but it is. And, I watched him very closely at Ohio State. I thought it was a no-brainer pick for the Cardinals. There were some talks there in the weeks leading up to the draft, like, do you take Neighbors or do you take Marvin Harrison Jr.? And I think at this point, people would say, well, in retrospect, you probably should have taken Malik Neighbors. I understand he has the knee injury. He's out for the year, and that's not good. But seeing what he was able to do on the football field, he kind of looks like a better NFL receiver. Harrison at the time was the much safer pick, and I would have picked Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought he was going to become a star in this league. Now you see that performance, and you see him kind of coming to life here a little bit with Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback, and you start to go, Kyler Murray, he just ain't it. He just ain't it. And the signs have been there. The writing has kind of been on the wall. Management, front office, executives there in Arizona, they decided to give him a big-time contract. And I don't know how you're going to get out of this if you're the Arizona Cardinals, to be completely honest with you. But I don't think, Kyler Murray is going to be their starter again. Going into next year in 26, I don't think Kyler Murray's your guy. I don't think it. I think it's run its course in Arizona, to be completely honest with you. And like I said, you paid him a ton of money, so you have the contract thing. Look, you can make it work. Look at Denver. Right? Look at Denver. They're still paying Russell Wilson a ton of money. They're winning plenty of games, right? They look like a playoff team here at this point. Miami might have that same conversation with Tua. Like, okay, we're paying this guy, but, I don't know. It ain't really working. But Kyler Murray, it's just when you struggle and you lose games and you're not, playing at an elite level, there's got to be, personality traits and leadership traits that kind of take you over the top and let you stick around here. I mean, Kyler Murray looks like a horrible leader, right? He doesn't take any blame. He doesn't say the right things at the podium, right? Of course, you had the drama about the video games. I don't know how true that is, right, about him, playing video games and not watching tape, whatever. Again, I don't know if that's true, but that story is very much still out there. And you look at him, and this is a guy that can, not making fun of him, he can hardly see over the line of scrimmage. Like, he is a tiny guy as far as his stature goes. He's, jacked up, but he's a short guy. He's a short fellow out there playing the quarterback position. I understand the talent's great. Seeing him run around, in the pocket, escaping the pocket, it's great. His deep ball is beautiful. I understand that. But it's not resulting in wins, and you've kind of done this same song and dance for several years now. I understand he's had a couple of big-time injuries, and, staying healthy is very much a factor here in this situation for Kyler Murray, because it's not like he's Joe Burrow when he's out there. All right, let's be very clear. He ain't Joe Burrow when he's out there. And now all of a sudden with Jacoby Brissett being the quarterback, they go to Dallas and they win in prime time. You look at their record; they're 3-5. But I think you could be in a spot here if you're the Arizona Cardinals, where you're a few plays away from having a winning record. Obviously, the Tennessee game, people remember the Titan game, just a complete collapse, right? And you're a couple plays away from winning some other games there as well. For the record, I don't trust their head coach Gannon. I think that's a decision you also have to make this offseason if you're Arizona. Like, maybe you move off the quarterback, might have to move off the head coach as well. But seeing what Jacoby Brissett has been able to do with this offense, again, there's some talent. Right, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a tremendous talent. I understand he's dropped some footballs. I understand that. But there is no way he should be as ineffective as he was these past few weeks with Kyler, and really all of last year there as well. And you saw him come to life a little bit. McBride is an incredible tight end for the Arizona Cardinals there as well. And seeing a guy like Jacoby Brissett, who's a veteran, that's not going to do anything special, but he's going to limit the mistakes he makes. He's going to facilitate the football, kind of just play point guard, not make mistakes, keep the chains moving. All of a sudden you go, okay, this Cardinal team, they have a little bit of life. They have a little bit of life, and I don't think you've seen that with Kyler Murray. I think that's kind of run its course. Again, the leadership stuff, the podium stuff is not good enough. And frankly, I'm figuring out how to get out of this thing the rest of the way. And we'll see. Like, is Jacoby Brissett your answer? No. But, at this point, they alluded to this on the broadcast last night, Did Aikman and Troy Buck, where it's like, I don't know. You can't really go back to Kyler here. You gotta just run this thing with Brissett if he's healthy, and we'll see. If Kyler's ego is going to get damaged so much and he won't even be the backup, or if he's going to continue just not to dress because he's butthurt that he's not starting. I don't know, but I just don't really see how you can go back to him here at this point. I think it's kind of run its course with Kyler Murray, and when you pay the quarterback a lot of money and it's a mistake, you're in trouble. You're in serious trouble. There are ways to get out of it. Mentioned the Denver Broncos. That's your perfect example. But when you're paying the quarterback and it ain't working, it's tough. And that's what Arizona is doing right now. So some decisions to make for them. Dallas, who, they probably thought they were going to win this game, no problem. Next thing you know, they're 3-5-1. The next thing you know, it's like, well, that division is over, right? When you're talking about the NFC East, the Commanders stink. I didn't see that coming. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. They're cooked, right? The Giants, Jackson Dart has provided a spark for them. I think they're a fun team to tap into. They got a ton of injuries. They're cooked, right? And the Dallas Cowboys, 3-5-1, which their defense, it ain't Bengals bad, but it's bad, right? They're cooked there as well. I mean, the Eagles are just going to moonwalk to the division title again. I mean, they can afford to lose games. And when we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, they're just worried about, the West, right? The Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Bucks, and of course the North there as well with the Lions and the Packers. But you're not worried about your own division there whatsoever if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think Kyler's time is done in Arizona, to be completely honest with you. All right. Before we get out of here, Tito Francona, a finalist for Manager of the Year. And, some people in the fan base were like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Why would he be Manager of the Year? Look what he was able to do. Right, this is a team that hadn't been in the postseason since 2020, and that, of course, was the COVID year, the 60-game schedule, right? And before that, they hadn't been since 2013, and he gets them to the postseason with a young core, right? Does Krall deserve some credit for what he did at the deadline? Yeah, absolutely. But Tito Francona absolutely should be a finalist for Manager of the Year. People had some issues with him and how he operates, right? He played Santiago Espinal a little bit too much. He loves bunting the baseball. Some decisions he made in the Dodgers series where you're like, I don't know, why is Zach Littell still out there? Well, the Dodgers just won the World Series again, right? And ain't nobody beating the Dodgers. Blue Jays should have, could have. Talked about that a little bit yesterday, but it's the Dodgers, right? I mean, you had no chance against the Dodgers. And what he did was tremendous. Now, when you look at this, you probably give it to Pat Murphy, right? The Brewers manager, right? He won all those games. They by the way, couldn't beat the Dodgers in a single game in the postseason. You probably give it to him, but he absolutely should be a finalist here. And I think people should be really excited about Tito Francona here. I mean, the plan, he's coming back, right? Brad Mills, Nick Kirby talked about this. I believe that video premiered this morning. You can catch it podcast form, catch it up on the channel. Did a great job kind of breaking down, all that transpired there. So Tito's right-hand man has always been Brad Mills. He's done. He retired. I think that's kind of a loss, honestly. I get it's baseball. It's not, football or whatever, but more so for Tito, right? I mean, that was his guy. It's like his best friend. That's, been with him forever. So we'll see how Tito does this year without him. But, I hope Tito, what is he, mid to high 60s? Don't know his age off the top of my head, but I hope he's here for several more years. I hope you can continue to build off this where you're at. But again, what did we say kind of when the season ended against the Dodgers? I think it's a success. I think it was a tremendous success. There's people in the fan base that might disagree with that. That's fine. But it's only a success if you make the steps that you need to make in order to improve. Not to sit there and go, we made the playoffs. We're good. We win a World Series with this group. Not the case, right? You need a bat. You need to figure out the pitching a little bit. Talk Hunter Green trade. I don't know fully where I'm at. At first you're kind of like, what? And then you're like, maybe that's not the craziest idea of all time. So we'll spend more time on the Reds, obviously, going forward. But absolutely deserves to be a finalist for Manager of the Year. Again, I'd probably give it to Murphy. We'll find out next week if he wins it or not. But great season from Tito Francona. Unbelievable. Gets the Reds back in the playoffs. Did they get a lot of help? Yes. Was it a minor miracle that the Mets collapsed like that? Maybe. Reality of the situation, you kept fighting. Could have been down and out 10 times. You got back up each and every time. You get to the postseason, and, you played the Dodgers, right? You played the Dodgers. And there's a lot that needs to change if you want to sit there and realistically beat the Dodgers. But he absolutely deserves to be a finalist here at this point. Nick Kirby says, fire Tito in the chat. Getting my phone out here just to refresh as we're live here on the show, see if Cincinnati did anything. It doesn't look like it. I don't think I've gotten a text that the Bengals have made a trade or anything like that. Trey Hendrickson, he's still a Bengal, I guess so. The Jags are trading 4th and 6th round picks to the Raiders for Jacoby Myers. That's interesting. They lost Travis Hunter, of course, so big time overtime win for Vegas. Funny, they just played each other. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think anything happened here at this point. But the plan is to be live around 4. We'll talk to Reed Mouse about that. I think that is Reed's plan. I'll probably jump on for 15 minutes or so. Hopefully we're talking about a little bit more than just the Logan Wilson trade, but wouldn't surprise me if that's all we're talking about here at this point. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in. Again, news of the day, Logan Wilson to Dallas for a 7th-round pick. and we'll see if any more moves happen throughout the duration of the day leading up to the 4 o'clock trade deadline here. But plenty of good stuff coming the rest of the way this week. Looking to get some guests on the show there as well. Reed and I have been working on that. We'll have our college football top 10 tomorrow. We'll talk, obviously, the Bengals. We'll talk deadline. We'll talk bye week. I wonder how many points the bye week's going to score against the Bengals defense this week. We'll see how many they put up, but hopefully the Bengals don't lose the bye week. But we'll talk about that. Plenty of stuff coming your way here on the show. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in. Clips on social media, clips on YouTube going out later today, and, of course, you can catch the whole show in podcast form as well. Catch you tomorrow, everybody. Actually, not true. Catch you around 4 o'clock.